Hello and welcome to the Digital Assets Report. I'm Jane King at the New York Stock Exchange, and with me today, Vincent Molinari, Liquid M Capital CEO, always with me, a frequent guest. Also, Jeff Bandman, the founder and principal of Bandman Advisors. So welcome, Jeff. Great to have you on the
good morning, Jane.
Digital
Thank you
Assets
so much
Report.
for having me today.
And I want to hear about Bandman Advisors. So you're the founder, principal here. Tell me about what it is that you do.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. So I started Bandman Advisors last year. I had worked at the CFTC, the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, in a number of different roles, and a lot of that work really focused on fintech innovation, blockchain, cryptocurrencies. We had started a staff working group that I chaired in 2015 at the CFTC to start monitoring these developments and working with innovators. So then when I left government in the middle of last year and moved back to New York, I wanted to form kind of a platform that would enable me to work with innovators and innovators to work with me.
Okay.
And I think kind of the concept and succinctly is I'm a business person who can speak regulator and a former regulator who can speak business and really help bridge that gap.
That is a very valuable skill, I would say, in these times. So you basically took all the experience you had at the CFTC and launched your own private business involving blockchain and fintech.
That's right. I mean, I work with companies ranging from large global institutions to tiny startups. It's really exciting to be able to be involved in both. In a way, it feels like as a regulator, you're sort of a lifeguard, you're sitting up in that chair, but then when you get to work in the industry, you've jumped into the pool.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm in the pool, and just given how fast everything is moving in blockchain and crypto and fintech, we're swimming pretty hard.
What are you telling your clients about this space right now?
I'm very optimistic. I'm very bullish, and not necessarily from the perspective of investment advice in a particular cryptocurrency or company or coin, but I think it's really an exciting period. It's like the birth of the internet. It's the birth of this whole new set of assets that are digitalized, that are natively digitalized. And what's also exciting about it is to see, I think we're really on an arc towards greater legal certainty, both in the US and around the world. It's evolving, but I think that the innovators can really be part of that conversation and help shape things in a positive way.
And that's what Vince and I talk about a lot, is how the people who are the early adapters of this technology are kind of helping design the regulations around it. So Vince, do you have any new, it seems like every week there's kind of some new news in this area. So
well, I think keeping with Jeff's comparison to being a lifeguard and now swimming in the pool, we're starting to see some lanes established, right? So, I think when we look at the January 24th op-ed by Chair Clayton and Chair Giancarlo, respectively.
And that was in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes.
Okay.
The SEC and CFTC, it's kind of really atypical. This wasn't a 21A report. This wasn't an investor bulletin. This was meant to send a big message broadly. It was two commissioners of leading regulatory bodies coming together for an op-ed. So I think, and I'd love to talk with Jeff about that, get his opinions on it, but I think that is a really meaningful piece of news and messaging coming out of both regulatory agencies.
Can you kind of summarize what the op-ed was about? Like, where are they headed with this?
My opinion, I think it's really positive. I think it is contrary to some people thinking that this is the regulatory agency saying, hey, down with cryptocurrency, down with this new emerging asset class. I think it's quite the contrary. They recognize the power, they recognize this is innovative, but they recognize that this has grown so fast, and $700 billion in market cap of cryptos today, that it needs some level of investor protection and rules of engagement. And then I think it could really grow even exponentially bigger with the right stewardship.
Now, Jeff, do you think a lot of people are kind of on the sidelines? I have a friend who works at Morgan Stanley, and she's kind of like, Morgan's not getting involved in this right now. I mean, do you think once this all gets established, we might see an influx of new capital in this area?
I think that we will over time. I think that investors trust regulated markets that have the supervision of organizations like the CFTC and the SEC. And I think one of the things that's important to take away from that joint editorial that they wrote is, first of all, both agencies are trying to balance elements of their mission. In the case of the SEC, kind of two core elements of their mission are investor protection, but also capital formation. In the case of the CFTC, it's also customer protection, but also risk hedging and operating an orderly market. And so I think a lot of the growth in the market cap of these currencies and tokens has been very much retail driven. I think a lot of the institutional money is waiting to see if there are the safeguards, the procedures, the infrastructure that they are used to seeing in the securities market or the futures and swaps market. So I think that this op-ed by Chair Clayton and Chair Giancarlo are important in that direction in a couple things. First, to show that the regulators are working together, not operating piecemeal. Secondly, that both of them are trying to, on the one hand, show a concern for promoting and not stifling innovation, but also they're coupling that with rigorous, dedicated enforcement efforts. Both agencies are very active in that area. There was a joint statement recently from the head of the enforcement divisions of the SEC and the CFTC. So I think the regulators are trying to balance those things. And one other observation I would make that I found quite interesting about it, which is that they talk in the editorial about the regulatory climate of the 1990s that surrounded the birth of the internet.
Okay.
And this is not actually just a new thing they've started saying. For example, Chair Giancarlo, back when he was a commissioner in 2016, spoke at one of the earliest US distributed ledger technology conferences, and he advocated for a policy which he called first, do no harm. That we should allow these technologies and innovations to develop,
Right.
but in a way that also protects the individual.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want it to be Wild West, but yet still. Now, one question I have is about, these are US agencies, the SEC, the CFTC, and a lot of this is global. Bitcoin, how is that being addressed, or can they even do anything about that?
It's a great question. These markets are 24/7, 365. They don't just trade during set business hours, and in fact, part of the power of these new digitalized assets is you don't even actually need a trading platform analogous to an exchange to trade them. You and I, at any hour, day or night, could have a bilateral transaction without the need for a central intermediary. So, it's a challenge for regulators to keep up with, and regulators are looking at it from a number of different perspectives. And if you look at it in sort of the sequence with which US regulators have addressed it, there's a logic to it. First, the concern was terrorist finance, so Treasury was looking at it. Criminals, terrorists, anti-money laundering, working with the Justice Department, seizing the Bitcoins from Silk Road. But then after Silk Road, after they seized the Silk Road Bitcoin, the US Marshal Service auctioned it off. Now, when they seize narcotics, they don't auction off the narcotics. But to me, this said that the US government wasn't going to make these products illegal, that they viewed them as legal if they were treated within certain boundaries.
I see, like a currency, basically.
Like a currency, but as Chair Clayton and Chair Giancarlo have warned in that editorial, and many have said, a currency is backed by a sovereign, it's backed by a government. And so the IRS, when it made its first statement about this in 2014, actually quite forward-looking, it said that although people call these currencies, it's not a currency. It gets treated like property.
Okay.
And it pointed to the fact that it was not actually a currency issued by a sovereign.
Okay, interesting. And so now, Vince, we have seen a few hacks lately. Of course, Mt. Gox was the famous one. That was a while ago, but there've been a few here and there too. This is part of what needs to be addressed as well.
And I think it's exactly to Jeff's point. If we look at the US, this is one model where we're getting it right, and it's early innings, again, as we say, on regulation. There's going to be collaboration with global regulators, but I think and I know we could talk about this for an hour, and we're running out of time, but when you look at what the op-ed also said about the states, right? States having oversight over a lot of these spot platforms that are not regulated from a money transmitter standpoint, I think there's a very clear message from both SEC and CFTC that maybe that's just not enough, and they're going to be revisiting different aspects of regulation here. So I think you're going to see states engaging further, more collaboration, and I think there's a really strong warning shot from this op-ed encouraging the professionals in the space, the attorneys, the financial service firms. This is all about substance, regardless of what you're saying the form is. So let's stop pretending about certain things being utility tokens when they are a hallmark of a security or they are a commodity that is taking this activity under CFTC. So I think the writing is on the wall that this is a different era post-Dow ruling 21A.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting and exciting to be kind of at the forefront of this, which we don't know where it's going. I mean, a generation from now, you know, you could be helping write this legislation. By the way, 5-time Jeopardy champion, Jeff. That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
When was that?
It was after law school. I'd actually completed a year clerking for a federal judge.
Okay.
And I really wanted to go travel and see a bit of the world. But I had just spent a year as an entry-level federal employee with law student loans, and I thought, how can I possibly get enough money to go travel? I thought, this is America, I will try to go on a game show.
And you did, and you traveled with the money you won, right?
It was great. It was the biggest single payday I'd ever seen in my life, and I spent a year and a half backpacking around Africa and Asia and parts of Europe. It was a fantastic experience.
That's awesome. Congratulations, and best of luck as you kind of help write this legislation and deal with this emerging industry. So thank you very much, Jeff and Vince, for being with us today, and thank you as well for joining us on the Digital Assets Report. I'm Jane King at the New York Stock Exchange.